In this world, we live under the limitation of time, space, and physical laws. Time acts as an oppressive force, making us hostile to its influence. Sometimes there is not enough time, and sometimes time drags forever. It would not be nice if we could stretch and contract time at will, getting more time to do things we want, making pleasurable moments last for an eternity, and unpleasant experiences pass in a moment. Another restriction is space. We may hear about some distant place that looks particularly interesting, but we can't go there easily. It requires money, effort, time, and patience to do the trip. In other situations, the problem is the opposite, lack of space. Most of us would like to get a bigger apartment, a bigger car, and so on. We can see how both time and space are constricting forces. They seem just like inexorable forces that we can't avoid, right? Wrong. Actually, we can. This is another interesting subject explained in the Vedic literature. Let's start with time. Not only time works differently in different parts of the cosmos, but time is also relative. It can be stretched or contracted practically infinitely. That's a point where modern science and the Vedic literature agree. According to the theory of special relativity by Einstein, the flow of time can change due to influence of speed and gravity. Someone traveling near the speed of light or living close to a strong gravitational field like a black hole would age much slower than someone living here on Earth. This can be empirically tested by sending clocks to space. A clock installed in a satellite orbiting the planet and thus subjected to a weaker gravitational pull runs at a faster pace than an identical clock in the ground. This is a phenomenon that is well studied by physicists but had to be taken into account during the development of the GPS system. Similarly, the Vedic literature explains that the flow of time is different in gross planetary systems and on subtle planetary systems. The practical implication of this is that beings in the higher planets don't become old like us and things don't degrade quickly like here. For example, what is 360 days for us is just one day for the demigods in Swargaloka, which is a higher planetary system, part of the subtle dimension. They live for 10,000 of such years, therefore their lifespan equals to 3.6 million Earth years. Similarly, what is 4.3 billion years for us is just a day for the inhabitants of Brahmaloka, the highest and most subtle planet of this universe, which is the abode of Lord Brahma, who acts as an architect of this particular universe. Their lifespan equals trillions of years of our time. Because their bodies and consciousness are so subtle, they live for a span of time that is practically limitless. On the other hand, time passes faster in the lower planets. In the hellish planets, situated at the bottom of the universe, time passes so slowly that 100 years there equals to just one day of our time. In these ways, the souls that fall there pay their debts in a time frame that doesn't interfere with their transmigration to their next body. The position of a living entity in the universe is determined by his consciousness. Therefore, souls with higher consciousness are promoted to the higher planets, where they don't only have access to material facilities, but are also less subjected to the passage of time, while souls with lower consciousness are forced to live in the lower planets. We can see thus that according to one's level of consciousness, he is constricted by material laws to a higher or lesser degree. However, everyone that lives inside the material sphere is constricted, from Brahma to the smallest organisms. There is only one place where people are not constricted by time, the realm of the Absolute, the spiritual sphere. This is the place where there is no time. Everything is eternal. All Krishna's pastimes exist eternally, and we have access to them according to our meditation or according to the influence of the internal potency. This is a place where there is no past or future. Everyone just lives in an eternal present, centered in their relationships with Krishna. This is the place we can attain as soon as our consciousness is sufficiently purified. The most interesting point is that life in the spiritual sphere doesn't necessarily imply a change in the physical location. It's not so much about reaching a particular location, but a state of consciousness. The inhabitants of the spiritual world are continuously absorbed in this eternal present of constantly meditating Krishna's names and activities. As we become absorbed in a similar mentality through the practice of the Bhakti Yoga process, we have the opportunity of connecting with this eternal present, even while still technically living in this material world. Time brings fear, since we fear losing what we have. Even if we attain a comfortable situation in this world, we can't really be happy, because we will be fearful of losing it. We can't have peace, and as Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, there is no question of happiness without peace. In the spiritual world, there is no fear. Everyone lives a life of bliss and knowledge, without fear of loss. That's why the spiritual world is called Vaikuntha, the place without anxiety. So, time is relative. It flows at different rates in different parts of the cosmos, and there is a place where time does not exist at all. If time is relative, what about space? It happens that space is also relative. Higher beings are not only affected by time in a different way, but they also perceive space differently from us. The 50th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam includes a description of the universe according to the perception of the demigods. We can see how much their higher dimensional universe is different from the gross dimension we can perceive with our senses. For them, the universe is a beautiful place, thriving with life, and everything is very accessible. What is thousands of light years away for us is just a Vimana drive away for the demigods. They can go from one planetary system to the other just like we go to the supermarket. For them, space works in a completely different way than it does for us. Not only the demigods are less constricted by time and space, but they are less constricted by physical laws. They can fly, create material objects, produce nuclear explosions with their voices using particular mantras, and control the forces of nature at will, just to mention a few examples. As one's consciousness evolves, he gains access to higher realms of reality and becomes less constricted by time, space, and physical laws. That's exactly the great contribution of Vedic literature, especially books like the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, that are especially composed with the goal of providing enlightenment. In the next part, we will see how space and time as well as physical laws can be manipulated, an interesting subject inside Vedic science. See you there!